Episode Q, Joseph Smith's Secret Handshakes, The Freemason Connection. Part 1. I originally planned on covering Freemasonry and Mormonism in one video, but as I worked through the material, I quickly realized there was far too much vital information that couldn't be left out. Even at 2/3 of the way in, I saw how much I was sacrificing in terms of depth and detail. To truly do the topic justice and give viewers the insight they need, I've decided to split this into a two-part video series. The connection between Mormonism and Freemasonry runs deeper than Joseph Smith Jr.'s initiation in Nauvoo in March 1842. Long before that, Hyrum and Joseph Smith Sr. had been Freemasons for over a decade, well entrenched in the society by the time Joseph Smith Jr. sought to establish his own lodge with Hyrum's help. In this video, we'll dive into the early roots of Freemasonry within the church and uncover the hidden history that the LDS Church has long kept in the shadows. Let's expose the truth behind the Masonic influence on Mormonism that you were never meant to know. Part 1. The Early Smith Freemasons. Hyrum Smith's initiation into the Freemasons occurred at Mount Moriah Lodge No. 112 in Palmyra, New York. While the exact year is unclear to myself, we know it was in the mid to late 1820s, before he became a witness to the Book of Mormon in 1829. But Hyrum wasn't the only Smith tied to Freemasonry. Joseph Smith Sr.'s cousin, a professor from Dartmouth College, John Smith, was also a known Freemason. This connection leads us to Joseph Smith Sr. himself, whose Masonic involvement has sparked controversy. Dan Vogel argues that the claim of Joseph Smith Sr. being a Freemason prior to 1842 is unproven. In fact, I personally discussed this with him in the comments section of Mormon Discussion Inc. last year. Vogel's argument hinges on the fact that there were multiple Joseph Smiths in Ontario County, New York. He's not wrong. In the 1820 census, 9 other men named Joseph Smith are recorded in the county. This suggests only a 1 in 9 chance that the Masonic Joseph Smith is the father of the prophet. However, I strongly disagree with Vogel's assessment for 2 key reasons. 1. Terry Chateau, in Freemasonry and the Church of Latter-day Saints, states, "The Joseph Smith family was known and acknowledged to have been a close-knit one, where strong individual affection and loyalty existed between each of the members. It was a Masonic family which lived by and practiced the estimable and admirable tenets of Freemasonry. The father, Joseph Smith Sr., was a documented member of the craft in upstate New York. He was raised to the degree of Master Mason May 7, 1818, in Ontario Lodge No. 23 of Canandaigua, New York. An older son, Hyrum Smith, was a member of Mount Moriah Lodge No. 112 at Palmyra, New York. The fact that Chateau explicitly links Hyrum Smith to Joseph Smith Sr. as fellow Freemasons, even naming Hyrum's exact lodge, strongly supports the conclusion that we have the correct Joseph Smith. 2. The website Masonry Today, a resource for tracking past and current Freemasons, clearly lists Joseph Smith Sr. as a member. And they don't just refer to him as a Joseph Smith, they precisely identify him as the father of the Mormon prophet. Here's an excerpt from their website. Today in Masonic history, Joseph Smith Sr. Joseph Smith Sr. was an American and the father of the founder of the Mormon religion. Smith was born on July 12, 1771, in Topsfield, Massachusetts. At the age of 25, he married Lucy Mack in Tunbridge, Vermont, where the couple lived and had 11 children. While I have great respect for Dan Vogel and often rely on his research, I cannot agree with his claim that we cannot confirm Joseph Smith Sr. as a Freemason prior to 1842. Although I acknowledge the confusion caused by the number of Joseph Smiths in the region, the fact that Masonry Today directly connects this Joseph Smith to his son, the Mormon prophet, indicates that we are indeed dealing with the right Joseph Smith Sr. With both his cousin and his son as members of the Masonic order, it only makes sense that Joseph Smith Sr. would have been initiated as well. The evidence speaks for itself, I believe. It would not be until March 15, 1842, that Joseph Smith Jr. would enter the ranks of the Freemasons as well. Part 2. Freemasonry invades Nauvoo. Hyrum Smith and Joseph Smith Sr. were not the only Freemasons within the LDS ranks before 1842. High-ranking members like Newell K. Whitney, Heber C. Kimball, and John C. Bennett were also well-known Master Masons. Now, why bring up Bennett? It's often claimed that Bennett played a major role in merging Freemasonry with Mormonism. But how much credit can we really give him? Sure, he contributed to the spread of Freemasonry, but to say he was the mastermind behind it in Nauvoo is overstating his influence. On October 15, 1841, Abraham Jonas, the Grand Master of the Grand Lodge AM of Illinois, issued a dispensation that empowered the creation of a Masonic lodge in Nauvoo. Jonas appointed George Miller as worshipful master, John Parker as senior warden, and Lucius Scoville as junior warden. This officially authorized Masonic activity in Nauvoo, and on December 29, 1841, the lodge accepted this dispensation and began holding meetings. When the time came to install officers on March 15, 1842, Bennett, who had been in Nauvoo since April 1841, was conspicuously absent from any position of power. Despite being a key figure in Nauvoo, Bennett wasn't named to any key leadership role within the Masonic Lodge. Given Bennett's reputation as someone who always sought influence, doesn't it seem odd that if he were truly the driving force behind Freemasonry in Nauvoo, he wouldn't have secured a high-ranking position? The evidence suggests Bennett's involvement in Freemasonry wasn't as pivotal as some have claimed, though he did indeed have a role to play. Hyrum Smith and John C. Bennett played roles in the rise of Freemasonry in Nauvoo, but it's clear that Bennett wasn't the driving force he's often made out to be. According to records from the BYU Library, during the official organization meeting in December, Hyrum was appointed as senior warden pro tempore, with Bennett taking on the role of secretary and Newell K. Whitney as treasurer. By March 15, 1842, when the lodge was officially established, Hyrum had been elevated to senior warden and worshipful master, both highly influential positions in the lodge's hierarchy. Despite his reputation and ambitions, Bennett never managed to secure a high-ranking role within the Nauvoo Masonic Lodge. His absence from positions of true power is glaring. So if Bennett was supposedly the force behind bringing Freemasonry to Nauvoo, why wasn't he at the top? Once again, it seems Bennett was cast as the scapegoat, his role exaggerated to shift attention away from the deeper involvement of the Smiths in Freemasonry's introduction to the church. The evidence shows Bennett wasn't the mastermind. He was just a convenient distraction. LDS historian Reed C. Durham, in his book Is There No Help for the Widow's Son?, presents a statement that leaves more questions than answers. By 1840, John Cook Bennett, a former active leader in Masonry, had arrived in commerce and rapidly exerted his persuasive leadership in all facets of the church, including Mormon Masonry. Joseph and Sidney Rigdon were inducted into formal Masonry on the same day, being made Masons on site by the Illinois Grandmaster. But here's the problem. How could Bennett possibly influence Mormon Masonry in 1840 when there wasn't even a Masonic lodge in Nauvoo until 1841, a full year later? By the end of the first year, the Nauvoo Lodge had exploded to over 300 members, a fact Durham and others attribute to Bennett. But I strongly disagree. Here's why. It was Hyrum Smith, not Bennett, who held the true power in the Nauvoo Lodge. As the Grand Master, or worshipful master, Hyrum oversaw the lodge until his death. Bennett, on the other hand, though elevated by Joseph Smith to positions like General of the Nauvoo Legion and Nauvoo Mayor, both of which were largely symbolic under Joseph's control, never held this crucial position in the lodge. This was one figurehead title Bennett never attained. Bennett may have played a role in recruitment, but the real power rested with Hyrum Smith. It was Hyrum who requested Grandmaster Jonas to preside over the installation of the Nauvoo Lodge, and Jonas accepted. Meanwhile, Joseph, though yet to be fully initiated into the order, was appointed to a temporary role as Grand Installing Chaplain, a position of significance within Freemasonry, but clearly subordinate to the Grand Master. On the evening of March 15, 1842, after the lodge's installation, Joseph Smith Jr. and Sidney Rigdon were initiated as entered apprentices, officially becoming members of the newly formed Nauvoo Lodge. In an unusual move, both men were raised to the rank of Master Mason just 3 days later, an exceptionally rare advancement within Masonic tradition. Joseph himself recorded the event in History of the Church, Vol. 4, 32 p. 551, Tuesday, March 15th. I officiated as Grand Chaplain at the installation of the Nauvoo Lodge of Freemasons at the Grove near the temple. Grand Master Jonas of Columbus being present, a large number of people assembled on the occasion. The day was exceedingly fine. All things were done in order, and universal satisfaction was manifested. In the evening, I received the first degree in Freemasonry in the Nauvoo Lodge, assembled in my general business office. Hyrum may not have had Bennett's flair for recruitment, but when it came to controlling the lodge, it was Hyrum who held the reins of power for Joseph, not Bennett. On March 17, 1842, Joseph Smith established the Relief Society, positioning it as an auxiliary for the female members of the church. While its structure bore striking similarities to the Masonic Lodge, reflecting the influence of Joseph's recent Masonic initiation, there's a sharp distinction. The Relief Society never adopted the degree-based system that is central to Freemasonry. Unlike the Masons, the Relief Society never conferred degrees, nor did it conduct formal degree ceremonies. Instead, it remained focused on fostering unity and service among its members, sidestepping the esoteric rituals that defined the Masonic tradition. Joseph was quiet active with his new obsession with Freemasonry. BYU Library cites author and historian Mervyn B. Hogan on their website. In July 1842, the lodge was suspended after complaints from other lodges in the area that they were functioning against policy, having initiated more members than any other. The suspension was lifted in November that same year. The lodge then divided into 3 separate lodges. On June 24, 1843, Hyrum Smith laid the cornerstone for the Masonic Temple or Hall in Nauvoo, and was dedicated on April 5, 1844. Due to ill feelings toward the members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints within the Grand Lodge of Illinois, on October 3, 1843, the Nauvoo Lodge and all other Mormon lodges in Illinois and Iowa were formally dissociated. In reaction, and with the assistance of Abraham Jonas, the members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints planned to establish an independent coexistent competing Masonic Grand Lodge in Illinois. Part 3. Temple in the Lodge. Before moving forward, we need to dismantle some of the misleading claims made by Joseph Smith and later church leaders. One such claim is the notion that Masonic rites had been perverted over time and required purification, a justification that conveniently coincided with Smith's sudden adoption of Masonic elements. We'll address that in detail soon, but first we must confront a twofold issue. 1. The Nauvoo Temple was not initially designed for the complex rituals we associate with the modern endowment ceremony. Instead, it was intended mainly for worship services and occasional baptisms for the dead. For early church members, endowment simply meant the imparting of knowledge, much like the School of the Prophets in the upper rooms of the Kirtland Temple. This concept of the endowment predated Joseph's involvement in Freemasonry. 2. The Nauvoo Temple was planned and the land purchased in 1840, 2 years before Joseph even became a Mason. Like the Kirtland Temple, the Nauvoo Temple had 2 assembly halls and an attic with classrooms and offices. However, after Joseph became a Master Mason, the temple's use took a sharp turn. Suddenly, the basement and attic, previously intended for baptisms and study, were repurposed for ordinances that mirrored Masonic rituals. So why the sudden change? Why were the first temples, including Nauvoo, used primarily as meeting places and centers of learning until Joseph's Masonic initiation? Only after his initiation did he claim revelation that Masonic rites had been corrupted and needed to be restored. It's no coincidence that this so-called revelation conveniently aligned with his newfound Masonic affiliations. The timing raises serious questions about whether these rituals were truly inspired or simply appropriated from Freemasonry. That wraps up part 1 of Joseph Smith's secret handshakes, the Freemason connection. We've only just scratched the surface of the deep-rooted connections between Freemasonry and early Mormonism. There's much more to uncover, from the secretive rituals to the influence on temple ceremonies, and we'll dive into that in part 2. Stick around, you won't want to miss it. Thank you so kindly for watching. This is the Ex-Mormon Informant signing off for today.